Indiana Jones, Indiana. It's a podcast about Indiana Jones. Every movie, 1 minute at a time. Indiana Jones Minute.
Welcome back to the Indiana Jones Minute, the podcast in which we celebrate and discuss the film Raiders of the Lost Ark 1 minute at a time. I'm Tom Taylor.
I'm Pete Mummert.
I'm Jerry Porter, lowly intern.
And today we are joined by two excellent guests, our first guests on the show, and appropriately so.
Hi, I'm Alex Robinson.
And I'm Pete the Retailer.
And these are the brainiacs behind the Star Wars Minute, which we've mentioned on the show before and which inspired this show and others like it. You guys have been doing the Star Wars Minute for, is it 4 years now?
3 years, right? 2013 we started, I believe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, just about three. We're on our fourth season, but our third year. So.
Okay. But we're very excited to have you guys here. And
well, thanks for having us.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Today we are talking about minute 16, and minute 16 begins with Indy showing off his second place trinkets and ends with Indy teasing his history with Abner Ravenwood to a pair of Army intelligence gentlemen. And before we dive into this, we should you two on Star Wars Minute, when you were doing Return of the Jedi, you, I assume completely seriously, suggested that the Indiana Jones films were Han Solo's carbonite fever dream.
Oh, right.
And Pete,
we didn't invent that theory, but we do agree with it.
That wasn't yours originally?
No,
I think I read that. Yeah, it was one of those kind of internet to not quite a meme. You know, there's a lot of those fan theory things going around.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Cameron is, Ferris Bueller is Cameron is Tyler Durden and stuff like that. This is one of them that was in that list.
The internet is so smart. They got so many ideas. But our Pete has been cataloging evidence to support this as we've been going along. And so, Pete, what do we have so far in that?
Well, minute 16 actually brings us to point of evidence number 6.
6?
So,
wow.
I'll start at the beginning for our guests.
Is it a red 6?
It is
could
exactly
be.
at 6.
It's an appropriately numbered 6.
Yes. Our first piece of evidence, when Indy is measuring the sand in the Chachapoyan temple and the rocks begin to fall on him, if you look behind the idol on the wall, it looks like a strange depiction of Snaggletooth from the cantina. And the first rock that falls is actually a Snaggletooth.
Wow.
Like any dream, it starts off a little bit, it's vague.
That is incontrovertible.
Yes.
Although when we first, I don't know if you guys talked about this, but when we first meet Han Solo, Snaggletooth is the one kind of sitting closest to him, I think, right? Now it's just right outside his booth there.
Yeah, there's definitely a shot of that.
So he's definitely got some thoughts going on about the cantina.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, a pertinent question at this point?
Of course.
Yes.
Do Han Solo's dreams about Indiana Jones happen in release order or chronological order?
I think we might have to wait and find out.
Okay.
So far, we've only seen 16 minutes of this movie.
So yeah, assuming we proceed with the other films in the series, we'll have to keep that in mind as they bounce around in time. So what else do we have, Pete?
Evidence number 2, Indy is chased out of a cave. Perhaps it's not a cave, by a large gray object. Shadows of another instance in his life. That's minute 10. Minute 12, we have 3 pieces of evidence. The first, Indy runs past the mules when he's fleeing the Jovitos warriors, and the mules make a sort of native Tatooiner Tusken Raider call.
Yeah, Jerry noticed that. I had never noticed
I
that
stand by that.
I listened to it several times, and I agree. It is native Tatooiner being spoken.
Who knows what they're saying? If only we
Right.
spoke Tusken Raider.
Exactly.
Evidence
And
number
yet another slur against the fine natives of Tatooine, that their fine vocal intonations are put in the mouth of a jackass.
Yeah.
Yes. Piece of evidence number 4, when Indy dives into the river and we look at the plane, it says OB and CPO on the tail. We're sort of right on the border between subliminal and liminal awareness of Indy's own universe, I think, here.
Well, that could be Han Solo's. I mean, he might think that 3PO's name is CPO. He cares
This
so
is
little
true.
about it.
Right. Like there was always that kid who was like, the 3CPO.
Right. Han Solo was that kid.
Yeah, Han Solo was always hands.
Right.
Let's see. Evidence piece number 5, which I think is the most compelling, is when Jock starts up the plane, it makes the sound of the Millennium Falcon hyperdrive.
Right.
Failing. The hyperdrive failing.
That's true. Even though the plane takes off, it sounds like the Millennium Falcon failing, which a shrink would, write a thesis on.
Very dreamlike imagery. And which brings us to piece of evidence number 6, is that Jack Porkins, Red 6, the first pilot to die in the battle for Yavin, shows up in Han Solo's dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
This is we kind of requested these minutes in a sense when you guys were like, hey, do you want to come on? We're 10, 15 minutes in. We're like, I think you described the scenes before this. I was like, wait, isn't Porkins coming up? I got all excited.
Yeah, I wish that we could all admit to being brilliant and calling you just in time for that. But as soon as we asked you, I was like, oh my God, wait a minute, Porkins is coming. This is perfect. They better say yes immediately. Otherwise, we don't want him on.
I just thought of 2 more things you might want to use as evidence.
Uh-oh.
That could be as evidence.
That
Okay.
already happened?
That are in this minute.
Okay.
Oh.
When Brody is looking at the artifacts and he says, "Oh, the museum will buy them as usual. No questions asked."
Oh my God.
No questions asked, of course, is what Obi-Wan Kenobi lists as one of his passengers on the ship. And of course, immediately after that, Han Solo is told the government is here, and he immediately thinks, "Oh wait, am I in trouble?" Because of course, Han Solo,
Yeah.
there
Yes.
you go. So if you want to add those
Not
as
bad.
half points or
Added. Yep.
Yeah.
Noted.
Except now Jack Porkins isn't the 6th piece of
oh,
evidence
that's true.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks.
Supplementals. 5A
I think
and 5B.
There we go.
I think it really humanizes Han Solo, though, because we think of him as this sort of wisecracking guy with nerves of steel.
Yeah.
But I think internally he's feeling a lot of guilt that if he hadn't been sitting around counting his reward and if he had shown up sort of in a timely manner, Red 6 would probably still be alive today.
Oh, interesting.
Nice. He's haunted by the ghost
Yes.
of Jack Porkins.
Porkins, why?
Well,
Why?
I think just like in a dream with the hyperdrive, and it's like as he gets on the plane, it's like the sound of the hyperdrive kind of failing, but of course he makes a daring escape in your dream,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
but in real life, the hyperdrive is failing.
This is heartbreaking. I feel terrible for both of these guys. Indy and Han.
So also, when you watch them, when you watch the movies in order now, do you have to watch the Indiana Jones trilogy in between Empire and Jedi? Because that's chronologically, I guess, where they would happen, right?
That,
Right.
yeah. I
Although-
think you kind of have to. I mean, if you want
Once,
to
Or
be
once they're done with this, then we'll examine all the evidence, and if it's compelling enough argument, then yes, it'll be these movies will be inserted into the trilogy.
All right.
We'll publish our findings in the Journal of the Internet, and it'll be official. And everyone will have to watch the movies that way.
Although since Han Solo is imagining our world, does that mean we're all Han Solo's dream? Are we all Han Solo?
Oh,
Whoa.
I always thought I was
I don't
Han
have a
Solo.
problem with that. Yeah, I got no problem with that.
Isn't every kid Han Solo at some point?
Now, literally, yeah.
yeah. Well, I guess that's why we all wanted to be Han Solo, because we're all figments of his imagination.
Right.
That's what-
We had no
Whoa.
choice. It's all Han
So
Solo.
does that mean all
way
the
down.
other are all the other Harrison Ford characters also? They're also then part of Han Solo's dream.
We have to wait for
Whoa.
Air Force One minute and Blade Runner minute.
Blade Runner minute. Witness minute. Yeah.
Mosquito Coast minute. I'd go on that one.
Regarding Henry minute.
This is gonna take forever, but it has to be done.
So, Hootkins.
Hootkins, our buddy Hootkins.
Hootkins. I did more. I think we talked about him a little bit on our show, but did you guys? Do you have info on his other roles? Because we kind of hit upon that they always seem to be kind of pointing out the fact that he's a large man.
Yeah, no, the only ones I know of are this and Porkins, and he's a cop in Batman, in Tim Burton's Batman. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, he's in
Yeah.
more than that.
All right. Well, let's hear it.
Well, he's Porkins, of course, in Star Wars, and here he's Major Eaton.
Yeah,
which
thanks.
is implying, yeah. Right around the same time, he was in something called Hanover Street. He played a guy named Beef.
That's also with
Yeah,
Harrison.
that's a Harrison Ford beef.
Oh, really? Hanover Street?
I think it's
I gotta
between
go
Star
back
Wars
to
and
that.
Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's Harrison Ford thinking he was a movie star now and could do whatever he wanted.
Well, he was kind of right. I mean,
Yeah.
he just not yet.
He's just jumping the gun a little bit.
Yeah.
Beef.
Beef.
He was in a movie called Hussy that had Helen Mirren in it that I don't know, but there he played simply Fat Man.
I got so lazy.
Yeah, come on.
So he was in
And-
Batman and Fat Man.
Yeah, yeah. And then in Valentino with Rudolph Nureyev, the Ken Russell movie, he played a guy named Fatty.
Oh my gosh. I want to hear the conversation with him and his agent. Where he's just like, do you see what's happening? Could we just, what do I got to do?
Maybe
Yeah,
like
the agent's like, oh no, the character's name is Joe Chambers. He's like, I'm not doing that.
Right.
Can we make him Sloppy Joe Chambers?
Yeah. Meaty Joe Chambers.
Joe Roast Beef Chambers?
But he has
Joey
a lot
Roast-
of,
Joey Roast Beef.
but he's got a lot of in addition to Batman and Star Wars, he's also in Superman 4.
Oh my
He
God.
was in Flash Gordon playing Zarkov's Weasley assistant.
Wow.
yeah, I forgot his name in that.
Yeah, Tubby.
Although, yeah, I really his name, despite not being food related, his name in Superman 4 is Harry Howler, which is cool.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
a good name.
You know, every time you guys bring up Flash Gordon on your show, I always feel a little bit bad because I've never in my life seen Flash Gordon. And it feels like
Wow.
yeah,
It's terrific.
just an oversight.
It is
It's-
terrific.
It's really fun to see if you're near a place that does kind of midnight movies or
Oh, sure.
If Flash Gordon is ever playing in kind of the right crowd of people who are fans or whatever, it's great to see in a crowd because everybody laughs at the right moments and it's a lot of
Oh,
fun.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll have to find that then. All right. Well, before we actually even get to Eaton, Red 6, there's a little bit at the beginning of this minute where they're still in the classroom, and we mentioned in the last minute that Marcus picks up Indy's apple that was left for him by a student, starts to dust it off, and then just sort of very slyly sticks it in his pocket. And he does the exact same thing right now with $2,000 worth of trinkets that Indy just handed him. He's like, oh yeah, look over there. I'll take care of these. No problem.
Well, I guess the thing is, when you're going to work on the black market, you have to assume everyone is stealing a little bit from each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Speaking of which, I thought it was funny. I know I mentioned the no questions asked thing before, but that's a weird thing for like a legitimate archaeologist to be like. That's one of his conditions. Like, you can't ask me how many of my assistants were killed.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why in the past few minutes, I called him, Elgin Marble Marcus, because he's clearly, it's shady. It's completely shady.
It was the 30s. People didn't know any better back then.
Pete our Pete mentioned last week it blew my mind that the Treaty for the Protection of Antiquities is completely made up. That didn't exist back then.
Huh.
There was no comprehensive treaty until I think about 1970 with a UNESCO treaty.
Which makes it sound like Mark is just like, oh yeah, watch out for all the stuff and don't break nothing. Make sure you're careful.
Well, and speaking of the black market, in this minute, he says, he hands him the trinkets or whatever, and Indy hands them to Marcus and says, I figured it all out. I need $2,000 to go to Marrakesh. And so I looked it up, and that would be $34,278.98 today.
Wow.
And you're like, okay, so is he going to go retrieve the idol in Marrakesh for $35,000?
Yeah, really.
Like, is that just what is he planning on doing there? Like bidding on the idol? Because it's going to pop up in the black market?
You figure he's probably has to bribe people and hire like some thugs, he needs like a team and stuff. And
yeah. He's got to stay somewhere, and he's got to kind of, he's definitely pay some people off, and then
dates. He's got to buy dates.
These bags of sand.
No Travelocity.
You eat them. I don't know if you guys mentioned this before in the previous minutes, but I feel like Brody seems much cooler and savvier here than he does in like Last Crusade. I feel like he suffered some kind of brain injury between this one and Last Crusade, where suddenly he's like this doddering C-3PO-esque, fop.
I have to say, we didn't bring that up, but I've been thinking about it the whole time because I love Marcus in this movie. He's like a just smooth, subtle, good character who makes like the most of his brief screen time. And I really had a hard time with him in Last Crusade, not to jump the timeline or whatever. But yeah, I can see why they did it, like to give him something to do. And he probably had fun as an actor. But yeah, it's tough to see him. It's not the same guy.
It's not. When I was in 10th grade, being a good Catholic, I got confirmed. And I took as my confirmation name Marcus.
I never
really.
Yes, that's totally true. And there isn't a Saint Marcus. There's a Saint Mark, but no Saint Marcus.
So is your confirmation
and they made an
official?
exception. Yeah, they made an exception. They're like, fine. And so my name is, Gerald Christopher Marcus Porter.
Wow.
And it was because of this character, not because of, as you said, the doddering C-3PO-esque of the Last Crusade, which is really hard to watch. He's a great character in this.
Yeah.
And he's frequently the voice of reason, too. Like, as a foil to Indy's sort of cavalier, brash style. Marcus is saying, well, as we see in some of the minutes upcoming, he has a healthy fear of God.
Yeah.
Kind of old school like.
Yeah.
I can't tell if he does or if he's sort of messing with those guys a little bit. Like he sees that they're not into it at all, and he's kind of like wiped clean.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's the next. That's a few minutes from now.
Right. Yeah, my notes just say Marcus Brody enabler. So we'll see if we know what that means.
But yeah, Marcus leads Indy to this huge, massive, echoey room with probably no locks on the door for this top secret conversation with U.S. government agents. And that's always struck me as weird. I love this scene, and I love that it's set here, but it seems weird to me that they picked this location for this conversation.
Do you think they're trying to make it to show that despite the first scene, Indy's class is not very popular because he's in like a small classroom and then they go to this giant other classroom that...
Yeah, the algebra guy gets the whole auditorium.
Have you guys been talking about the blackboard, or is this... We just saw it here, right?
No, it's just been introduced.
All right.
We talked about a little bit about the Turkdene Barrow, which was written on the blackboard.
Oh yeah, with the
in the classroom, but not in the
yeah.
Okay. Right.
Not in the Royal Masonic Girls' School, where this apparently was filmed.
Oh, and I need to correct myself from last. I was saying last week that I thought that the novelization said that this was Yale, but it was just Connecticut. So I was excited because I grew up in Connecticut. But it is Marshall College, which I don't even. Is that made up? I don't even know.
Isn't one of the marshals? Wasn't there a marshal who was a producer of the movie?
Oh, sure. Frank Marshall.
Garrett, yeah.
Frank Marshall.
Gary Marshall.
Harry Mark.
Please call me Gary. Sorry, wrong show. Yeah, so I assume that's some kind of nod to him, but
Okay.
I could be wrong.
But then they filmed at Yale for the fourth one.
Right.
So
There was
who
a fourth
knows?
one.
That's what they say.
Nah, not really.
I've been meaning to go back and check on that one and make sure it's. I don't know. I had just kind of. I don't know. I guess that's a conversation for a different time. If you guys
Yeah.
keep going that,
We'll
keep,
talk about this
keep
in 4
doing
years.
this. Yeah, come back and get me in 4 years. I want to address that movie again.
Yeah,
There's definitely
me
a
too,
scene in the
actually.
fourth movie that mirrors the carbonite freeze, though.
Oh, we'll see.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll see.
Save it.
Exactly.
When Porkins, I'm just gonna call him Porkins. I guess
Sure.
Major Eaton, but he's Porkins to me. He's always Porkins to me. When he, during the introductions, and he says, he's sort of introducing Indiana. He's like, oh, and expert on the occult. I had never heard that, and I was like, huh. What's that story?
That is interesting because the rest of the time you see, he knows about this stuff. Indy is obviously maybe a technical expert on this stuff, but it doesn't seem like he's into it at all. Like he really buys the. Well, in a few scenes, he talks about magic, a lot of superstitious hocus pocus. But I guess that doesn't keep you from being an expert on it, maybe.
Well, he's an archaeologist.
Sure he is.
It's an interesting shot, though.
A two-bit one, as we're discovering. But
It's right when he says expert on the occult, there's a kind of a close-up of Indy putting his hand on the Bible. So I was wondering if that was a Spielberg commentary on religion.
Could be.
One of the things I noticed in this minute was, this is nerdy Indy with his glasses and his uptight suit and everything. But this is probably how most people think of in Indiana Jones's life. This is how most people think of him being. They'd be shocked to know that this nerdy professor guy they live with is whipping people and throwing Nazis off cliffs and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. He must show up for work, his face all battered and scarred, and they're like, "Oh, that's archaeology,"
Yeah, we were wondering about that last week. Did the entire first, South America part of the movie just happen during his spring break or something? He was talking about his office hours. I'll be in the office Thursday, but not Wednesday. And we're like, are you? I don't know.
And they cut to Wednesday, and he's swinging on a vine somewhere,
Going through his desk calendar. Oh man, I was supposed to meet with Susie about her paper.
I'm picturing, in the. How I guess he couldn't get too modern, but if Indiana Jones was happening today, that it would be that he'd be in the jungle somewhere, in a pyramid or something, and then get a call. Okay.
Right.
Hang on, I got an email from one of my students that they're having a problem with it.
Hold on, you mummies.
Right.
At the very end of this minute, they're talking to Indy about. They say you studied under Professor Abner Ravenwood at the University of Chicago, which University of Chicago is a mile from me right now, so that's fun. I always notice that.
Wow.
If you're an archaeology fan, that is the place to go. They have the famed Oriental Institute, which is one of the best archaeological museums in the world.
I've never been. I'll have to check that out. Do they have the Ravenwood Hall or anything?
I think most people don't get sorted into Ravenwood; they get sorted into.
Oh boy.
But they say when they mention Abner Ravenwood, there's a look on Indy's face, and I'm wondering from what we learn later. I'm like, is he thinking oh, am I a dad? Did they? I left really quick last time I saw those guys, and things went great, and I did some stuff maybe I wasn't supposed to do. And
How old is Mutt supposed to be at this point? I guess he's not even conceived yet.
that's a really. I never thought about that.
Well, because I assume that his dalliance with Marion that results in Mutt must happen
After this movie.
as a result of them meeting in this movie, because I assume they haven't seen each other for 10 years based on when they show up. So
Right.
Yeah, she might be preoccupied if she had a kid running around, or maybe she's the worst mom ever.
Cut to upstairs in the Tibetan bar. Oh no, well that spoilers, but that burned us down. So hopefully he's not upstairs.
Right. That's where, in his origin story, that's where he learns every single personality trait that he has as an adventurer, is escaping from that building.
Is this the first time you hear his name? Is Indiana?
Do they call him Indiana?
Yeah, at the very beginning.
Belloc.
Yeah, Marcus does.
Yeah, Marcus says Indiana, and you're like, I couldn't recall, but is that the first time you hear his name? Because Belloc calls him Dr. Jones.
Right.
He never says like, oh, the famous Indiana Jones. He never says Indiana Jones. Interesting.
No, he just says Dr. Jones.
Huh.
Well, unless he says it in Jovitos when he's yelling to those guys. This is Dr. Indiana Jones. Get him.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. If only we spoke Jovito.
If only.
We also Colonel Musgrove is the other guy here.
He's the nice one.
Yeah, he's well. So interestingly, to keep an eye on this. He's a colonel, and Eaton is a major, so he outranks Porkins.
Oh, interesting. Wow, I'm just realizing something. Is he in Superman 2?
He is in Superman 2.
He's that guy on TV with Zod.
He's the general.
Oh my gosh, I just put that together just now.
He's not Zod. He's the other general.
Right. He's a puny human general.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's in Superman 2. He's also in shared credits with or shared the credits. How do you say that? He was also in Superman 4 and Valentino with William Hootkins.
Oh my gosh.
They were movie buddies.
wow, is he like Flacco or Slimmy or?
Yeah, they never made a Laurel and Hardy remake with him.
Oh man.
Well, people don't realize what a big deal it was to pair those two up again. Like there was so much clamor for that to be like when are you guys going to do another movie together?
When you see the pictures from the set with Spielberg just fawning at their feet.
Right. It's like whatever they captured on a screen that doesn't really fully represent what what Hootkins and Fellows were all about. They were
Right.
They were more of a stage vaudeville thing, and it's impossible to capture on film.
Well, you can see like one's the straight man with the bow tie, and the other's always causing problems.
There are a couple of swells. Well, all right. Does anybody have anything else for this minute?
Not
No.
I.
It's a
I'm
good
good.
opening the book there. It gives you a lot of stuff to chew on, so it's a good lead in.
Some of us were nervous that there wasn't enough going on in these minutes and we wouldn't have a lot to talk about. But honestly, I should say this before we get too far into it. This might be my favorite scene in the entire movie.
It's actually mine too.
It's one of mine too. It's a memorable.
In fact, when my son was little and an infant and stuff, and I'd be like laying down with him to get him to go to sleep, I would think, okay, I'm going to give him like 2 minutes. And I would either in my head do Han Solo's first scene from Star Wars or this. And when I would be done, I'd know that it's time to get up, and he would still be awake and it would be a nightmare, but whatever. So if I start sobbing and get really nostalgic during these minutes, that's why. But Pete, not the retailer, why don't you tell everybody out there how they can get in touch with us?
You can get in touch with us on Facebook. If you look up Indiana Jones Minute, you can find us at indianajonesminute.com. If you like our show, you will really like our guests. You can find them at starwarsminute.com, and we cannot recommend highly enough their fantastic podcast. But next time, if you want to listen to us, find us at Indiana Jones Minute.
Yes, please come back tomorrow. There's a lot more conversation about this conversation. So join us here at the Indiana Jones Minute.
Indiana Jones Minute.
Feel free.
Red Six standing by.